Hi folks. So I talked about a couple videos ago what my GM prep is for kind of getting the session all planned. So today I'm going to tell you about what my GM prep is for the day of. So what I do the day of or a couple hours before gaming to get ready for the game. So the first thing that I do is I look over my notes and see if there's anything that I need to fill in the blanks. Sometimes that's adding in the treasure that my players are going to find, figuring out specifically what it's going to be, or just using the tables in the Dungeon Master Guide to roll and come up with it that way. But it's also writing down stats for monsters, and I like to, if there's like a group of kobolds, I will roll all of their hit points. I like doing it that way. It adds a little bit of difference between the individual kobolds, and like if you have somebody who has an area attack and you've got like kobolds, so they only have like 5 hit points, if you do an attack that has 5 hit points worth of damage, there's a chance there might be a kobold that rolled really well and didn't fall. The big thing that I always do day of is setting up the table. So I pull out our grid map, and usually I will draw out at least one side of it for the dungeon or wherever I know the players are going to end up. And if it's something I don't want my players to see, I've got some black cardboard that I just put over the top of that, and then they have no idea. We also have these tiles, dungeon tiles. I've started using those for additional maps. So like the session we just ran, I used that along with some of the Fat Dragon paper crafts to make a hallway that they had to go down, and it had a bunch of traps and like swinging blades and stuff like that. So I set all of that up, and I set up my GM area. So I've got the GM screen. I usually have my laptop, a dice box, and then a notebook or a spare piece of paper and a couple pencils and pens. I always have extra pencils because inevitably one of my players will realize they don't have a pencil, or a pencil will break, or they'll walk away from the table for a moment and misplace it. So just that I've found helps speed up the game by having like 5 extra pencils just sitting there. On my laptop I have the notes for that session, and then the dice box obviously is for rolling dice, and the notebook and piece of paper, I find it's actually easier for me to jot down notes than to type it into my computer. So I will write down some notes, and ideally I go back over that the day after. Sometimes it takes a couple of days and then I have to remember what a note meant. But I also use this piece of paper to write down and keep track of hit points and any other stats that I need to keep track of, like, okay, this spell went off and it is only going to last 2 rounds. Tallying off the rounds as we get to it. I do use initiative tents. I found these on the Dungeon Masters Guild and printed them out. I've got a number of them that I've written in pen, the character's name, class, and then everything else I do in pencil so that as they level up I can keep using these initiative trackers. And then I've got a bunch of blank ones that I just write on in pencil for anybody else that's going to be in combat with them. I like using these initiative trackers. One, it helps me keep track of the initiative. I can just place them in order when I get all the initiatives and then not have to worry about that. And also, it gives the players an idea of, they can see the order, potentially kind of try and plan what they think they're going to do, and they also get a little bit of an idea of what they're up against. I don't put the name or anything of the foes they're up against on the side that's facing the players, that's just on my side. So if they've got an NPC that's part of their party, they can see where that one is, but the other ones, they don't know. And I think that adds a nice element of surprise, and you're not sitting there going, oh yeah, okay, well I know I go before the Helm Torer, but the Spectre's gonna go before me. I also will kind of go back over notes on any characters that are going to pop up. So if I had notes on what their voices sound like. I kind of do voices. I'm not always great at keeping them consistent, but I'm working on it. Also, go back over those stuff so it's fresh in my mind. I go through and make sure I have all the miniatures pulled that I need. I keep those in like a box or just a little Ziploc bag tucked back behind me. And oftentimes I'll pull a couple of extra. This is mainly so that Ryan doesn't really have a idea going in what's going to happen. I do like to tease him and be like, oh look, I'll grab this dragon miniature. Haven't used it. So that keeps him guessing, so he doesn't get that kind of heads up of the living with the GM. And then I also make sure that I've got all of the resource books on the table and handy. Usually the player's handbook is out with one of the players, but I try and keep the other ones sitting on the table next to me, or we've got a chair kind of right behind our an extra chair right behind our dining room table that oftentimes they'll live there because that's an easy place for me to turn around, grab if I need to reference something. I always make sure that I've got like a mug of tea or water or something like that. I sometimes will have a cup of coffee right at the beginning of the game if I'm feeling a little draggy, but coffee can sometimes make me jittery later in the evening when we game, so usually I'll stick to tea or water. Since I'm going to be talking a lot, I need to stay hydrated, and just having that there and ready is great. So there you go. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward prep for me. The big thing is just making sure that I have everything. Most of that is just, it makes me feel prepared and a little bit more sure of myself and ready to go, so that I'm not worried about, do I have everything, in addition to the worried about, I really want this to be an enjoyable time for my players and to have these epic moments and for them to walk away from the table and go, that was great, I can't wait for next time. So if you GM, how do you get ready on the day? Do you have any ritual or process that you go through? Let's talk about it down below. And I just want to give a big shout out to all of our patrons who help make it possible for us to keep making this awesome stuff for you. If you're interested in checking out our Patreon and getting some cool perks and stuff like that, you can check us out at patreon.com, and we'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative. Bye!